This is Taylor Bates.
This is Job Frederickson.
From Your Hands Write History, and you're listening to the KingdomCore Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the KingdomCore Podcast. I'm Chris, and I have my co-host Sean with me.
Hey guys.
We just got finished interviewing Taylor and Job from Your Hands Write History. Super nice guys, hilarious duo, and this is a special record. What did we talk about, Sean?
So we talked about the concept of the record, how it is a 3-part EP into one full-length record. Talked about their beginnings as a band, some funny tour stuff, where they started playing shows at. Yeah, and we also paid respect to their late guitarist, Anthony Panter, who passed away back in 2019, I believe, or late 2019, early 2020, who was one of the main songwriters for the band, who had his hands and voice quite literally over this entire record. It was a really awesome episode. I know I keep saying that. I'm going to say that every episode, but
every episode's awesome.
It's because of who we interview. But Taylor, special shout out to Taylor, has been a great friend of mine almost since the inception of Aggressive Worshippers, far before it transitioned over to KingdomCore. He's been a huge supporter of the ministry throughout the years and a treasured friend. So I wanted to thank him personally for coming on, as well as Job, another band member, for giving us their time, giving us their energy to come on this podcast and talk about their new record.
Especially that super sick high-def camera.
Yes, they definitely
that overpowered their computer.
Chris really wants to get the YouTube views up, and they had by far the best camera quality of any guests we've had so far. So go watch this on YouTube if you want to. They also ate a lot of ramen through it, so if you're into like mukbangs or stuff like that, you could get that as well.
The what was it? The official ramen, not the official ramen. You'll see in like literally 2 seconds.
Exactly.
All right, let's hop into the interview.
Well, cool. We're stoked to be here with you guys. Thank you for inviting
we're stoked to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
If I'm slurping too loud, please let me know, and I'll back off.
You're totally good. Would you mind telling the listeners what you are eating right now?
Currently, it's Maruchan ramen bowl, hot and spicy shrimp flavor.
Ooh.
And
not
honestly,
sponsored.
No, it's not.
Yeah. But we're trying.
Yeah. We're fishing.
Yeah, this company needs to sponsor Your Hands Write History. They'll send you out on the road.
What's funny is it's like literally the cheapest option that was at our local grocery store. I have never really had ramens growing up. Like Top Ramen, my family, we were very broke, so never could afford
the actual ramen.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you couldn't afford ramen at all.
Yeah, I thought that all like ramen was Top Ramen.
The great value Walmart version.
Yeah, and Top Ramen was it always smelled like cat piss to me, so I never wanted to eat it.
You wanted that top shelf ramen.
Yeah. and then lately, this last couple months, I tried one of these, and I'm like, oh, I actually like cheap food.
You're a touring vocalist, though. Shouldn't you know if you like cheap food or not?
Oh, I definitely eat. Like I'm one of those people that like on the road, there's a couple things I try to take care of, but really I'll eat pretty much anything. Like I've learned that there is a big difference in what you eat. It makes you feel sick. When you're, going up on stage, you're like, man, I already had 3 diarrheas and I need a 4th. So
what is the worst?
That's literally what touring is finding the least disgusting place to sleep and the least disgusting place to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. There you go. What is
the least disgusting place to eat?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, you look for the most disgusting place to eat.
Because these got the best food, believe it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Waffle House every time.
Yeah, Waffle House is great. If you're out near Texas, Torchy's Tacos that's the top tier of what you can get. Like Torchy's Tacos is amazing. And then we frequent Waffle House when we get out that way, just because it's cheap and it's open late.
Sick. Sean,
I
go
think
ahead
we were
with yours.
sustained for like one whole tour just with when Denny's did that pancake deal.
Yeah. And they had the quesadilla for $2.
Yeah.
And that was like our whole band. We would just get those quesadillas and the infinite pancakes.
Nice.
Our first tour, we brought along a friend, like literally the day of, like, hey, what are you doing for 2 weeks? Hop in. But he didn't have a lot of money with him at the time. And so we were like, okay, I'll buy you the pancakes, but you literally have to eat this whole pancake in one bite. And so we get everyone chanting, one bite. And he's like trying to stuff a pancake in his mouth.
Oh my god.
The waitress looking very concerned for his health.
Oh, that's so good. Would you guys?
I mean,
you guys
technically, he was 17, so that's kind of like child abduction.
Yeah. We abducted him.
I mean, he wasn't living with his family to begin with. So.
He came of his own
Eat
volition.
this pancake, kid.
This is a riot. A riot waiting to happen with those topics that we're
Yeah, all the heavy philosophy questions on this podcast.
There you go.
Oh.
I feel like Denny's. We all know the great like Denny's story. Like what like I forget what he says. Like what the F is up Denny's or whatever.
Oh yeah.
That was some friends of mine. Yeah.
I feel like you guys need to play a Denny's. Like,
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we've played a Voodoo Donut in Eugene. There's like literally not even room for people to walk into to get a donut, and that was a fun one.
That's amazing.
We spent almost like a year playing local shows here in a Chinese food restaurant.
Yeah, in the back store.
That's pretty
room.
sick. Wait, did they have a
Blown
buffet?
out.
They
Yeah,
did.
and it was, and they're like, oh, free food for the touring bands. Luckily, we were local, so we didn't get that. Because like
Did
it was like
how good is this Chinese food?
No, it had been like sitting under the heat lamps since like noon.
It's good enough to let a metal band play in their back room.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Or multiple metal bands.
Yeah.
And so it smelled like sweat, Chinese food, and the bathroom wasn't clean.
Oh
so.
gosh. Did that win the holy trinity of like the most dangerous place to go to the bathroom, most dangerous place to eat, and most?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Quite literally, I
It set the bar.
very grateful. They threw a lot of shows there, but like the layout of the room was such too that to get into the show, you had to wait for the band to finish playing a song so you could walk between them and their gear to get into where the crowd is supposed to be. And it's like they still had the booths in there, so you could like maybe fit 2 to 3 people shoulder to shoulder in like a line for the crowd. So you got like 30 people in there. It's super packed, but it's just a row of like 3 by 3 all the way back. And then so you'll have people just sitting there waiting until the band finishes a song, and they like come running in or they run out because they're tired of it. But
Go get some.
Well, and
Chinese
even
food
like
after.
to get like that like load in, right? Like
yeah,
it was like through the restaurant. So like people are enjoying their dinner as this stampede of musicians come through carrying like Ampeg like 810 cabinets as they're trying to eat like their chow mein.
a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, I like the food there. I always get the cheeseburger."
Oh yeah.
But it was our home venue it was the only place that did all ages shows here for a good year and a half or so. So like,
Yeah, we're thankful for them for sure. Yeah. In a small town, you don't have a ton of options like that, so you take what you can get.
they haven't been doing shows since the pandemic stuff all started, so I don't think that they are now. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
it's too bad.
That's
but like,
rough.
yeah, the speakers were blown out, so you like playing shows. You can't hear anything. You can't hear the vocals at all, even though it's cranked all the way up because they're just.
I mean, to be fair, most local shows I've been to, that's kind of how it was mixed, anyways.
Fair.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. I think that it's like you go to smaller local shows and they might have 2 powered speakers that are maybe 10, 12 inches big, and then you got full stacks, and you got
Yeah.
an 810 cab, and then the drummer's like hitting his 808s. He's like, I can't hear him. I need more bass drops.
Just the whole building vibrates.
Is this technically the start of the podcast?
We're
do you
in
guys
it.
do
Oh,
a-
yeah.
We're in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
edit that out. then.
Would you guys mind introducing yourselves to those listening who may not know you guys?
Sure.
What? I didn't hear the question.
Introduce
What
us.
is your name?
Oh, yeah. We're Your Hands Right History. We're a progressive metal outfit from Southern Oregon. Been around since 2013.
Almost
true.
a decade.
Yeah.
Technically, yeah, Morgan and I recorded our first 2 demos. Yeah, like over 10 years ago. It was when we were doing our first band, and after that band went kaputs, Morgan was like, I want to play guitar instead of drums, because he's a crazy good drummer too. So he was the drummer in our first band. Job had jumped in halfway through that band on guitar, then switched over to bass at the very end of it. And then basically Morgan was like, I want to play this material. And before then, locally, we didn't know anybody who could, because it was techie. It was, very needly-deedly and odd time signatures. And and Job picked it up on bass. Our friend Dallas Valley, he's an insane drummer now. What's funny is that he started learning drums because he saw Morgan playing and was like, oh, somebody can be good at drums. I'm going to do that. And now he's like, he's literally in like 8 local bands, bar bands and stuff, just making his money every weekend playing shows. So,
In fact, I'm pretty sure that's where he's at right now.
yeah. But yeah, and so like he started learning drums because of Morgan, and then Dallas was like, I want to play those songs. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. Like Morgan's the drummer. And Morgan's like, no, I want to play guitar now. And so, so then we kind of transitioned into that pretty quickly, and we wrote an EP, 5 songs. Technically, we wrote 6 songs in that first year, recorded it ourselves, booked our first tour, having never toured, left for 2 weeks and released that EP. And then shortly after released the last song, which we split into 2 parts, called Rest Eternal. And all within the first year of the band, like we filmed music videos, we did all kinds of stuff that it was all new for us, but we were ambitious and learned by all of our mistakes.
Which of that there were plenty.
Yeah. And we were flawless. But we so Your Hands Right History is the band. I don't know if we mentioned that. But yeah, progressive metal from Medford, Oregon.
Your names.
We're just a group.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Taylor. I'm the singer.
I'm Job. I play bass in Your Hands.
Perfect.
Sweet.
Could you guys
Who
talk
are you
a little
guys?
Yeah.
Talk about your band.
talk about our band? My band
Yeah.
is KingdomCore. Core Kingdom, actually.
You have like a whole
What kind of genre is it? Yeah.
named.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to hear about my band.
I want to hear about it.
Tell us
Is
about
she
your
calling
band.
us a bunch of
Actually-
nobodies now?
I might take a risk here because this podcast isn't going to come out until mid next week. So I'm hoping that it's announced by then. I might have to bleep this out. We'll figure it out. But my
Sick.
band Refiner just to and it might be freshly announced when this podcast comes out. I'm not entirely sure. They've been kind of
I
sitting on it
believe
for a
you
bit.
swore like that.
Yeah.
All those beeps, man. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Chris, you kiss your mother with the mouth?
Like I only kissed my wife.
And we just signed a beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, we'll see how that news comes out, but
That's
I'll
awesome.
double check with them. I'll be like, announce it please before this podcast comes out so I can just leave it.
Yeah.
Less editing for me.
Yeah.
Listen, there's this podcast and we have this guest band on and they have at least 3 fans. We gotta announce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You have at least 3 fans because you
there's
have at
2 of
least
them
2.
right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Right.
My wife's in the other room, so that's 3, man.
Yeah, there you
There
go.
you go. Could you guys talk a little bit about the band name and the origin behind that, meaning and all that?
It's wait, it's a synonym. The thing where you
think
have
an
like
acronym.
Acronym.
an acronym is what I mean.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
an acronym
words.
for Yahweh.
I think it's a
Yeah,
big
was that
I guess.
intentional?
Yeah,
I
so-
wanted to ask.
So Your Hands Right History is the acronym for what's called the Tetragrammaton. YHWH, which people are like, oh, that's the name of God. Technically, it isn't, because YHWH, the Hebrew culture believed God's name was so reverenced, and so like they didn't want to repeat it, so they actually took out the vowels, as far as we know, and just left YHWH as a reference point for like his name. So some people like, we've gotten flack for people saying like, how dare you name your band God? And we're like, well, it's not. It's Your Hands Write History.
Yeah.
And then we've also gotten flack on the other side, like, oh, that's a Christian name or whatever. And we're like, well, yeah.
We've also gotten flack for just like a really long name.
Yeah. Like, well, it's technically YHWH.
Yeah.
Like, that's too many letters.
Did you guys start with YHWH and then you just kind of figured out a name from that?
It was literally the first idea. Like, before the band started, Dallas, our drummer, and I, it wasn't even this band rendition, but we had a rehearsal. It was the one and only rehearsal with that group for a band, and we were just kind of tossing around band name ideas. And he says, "Oh, I always thought it would be really cool if there was a band name, that had I always like acronyms." And so then we started discussing like, oh, like YHWH is kind of cool. So I just started with that, and I went home that day, literally was like, YHWH, Your Hands Write History. Yeah, that's cool. And then that was literally like first name. I'm
That's
like, yeah. And then ever since then, I've tried to think of other acronyms for it, and I haven't really thought of any good ones. So we stayed with that. It's still a work in progress name. 10 years later, still working on it.
It might just change tomorrow.
Yep.
No, I think it's an absolutely sick name. It fits it perfectly.
It definitely was like it didn't feel like most of the stuff that I've ever worked on. It feels like we're working, we're trying. And that was literally just like a kind of a God moment of like, there's the name. And it was really cool.
That's awesome. Could you guys talk about, you guys just released a new album, the Solar Paradigm Triunity.
Yes, sir.
That came out, what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Something it's like that,
For those people listening. But could you guys take us through that, talk about that a little, about the concept, and then we'll get into the album?
For sure. So it's technically 12 songs. The Solar Paradigm Triunity. We wrote all of that material. At the time, we had a second guitarist. His name was Anthony Panter, and he was the dominant writing force during that time period. Morgan actually stepped away from the band for a little bit to go to school and pursue some other stuff. So Anthony and us, we wrote that material roughly 6 years ago now, is kind of like when we finished writing it. But it started off, we didn't really have a concept in mind, and we wrote the first song, which is now called Orphan Star, and it at the time was called No Father of Mine. And that was all literally the first year of the band. We had written that song right before leaving for the tour, and we actually played it on that first tour because we liked that song. And Anthony played 8-string guitar, Morgan played 6. So for the first couple years of the band, it was a 6 and 8-string guitar. And eventually Morgan is like, oh, I'm going to just learn 8-string too, because this is getting complicated, like trying to transpose parts.
Yeah.
So like we thought, like, this is so cool. And then he's like, he's got a 5-string bass, 6-string guitar, 8-string guitar, so many strings.
12-string drums.
Yeah.
13-string vocals. But so we transitioned more into the 8-string, the heavier, some gent influences as well. Whereas it used to be a lot more techie, needly deedly bands like the Safety Fire or Between the Buried and Me, like very proggy, techie. Kind of it was kind of hard to. I'm a vocalist. I don't know time signatures, so I was just like, well, here's the one. I can keep track of that.
A lot of that stuff I think is like inspired by like the Safety Fire.
Yep, a ton of it, or Oh Sleeper's old stuff, and then after Anthony started writing the songs, it leaned very heavy into more like the Contortionist and Periphery and Tesseract, and so the Solar Paradigm Triunity, genre-wise, kind of fits along with those bands, like much more groove-based, a lot of melodic ambient stuff. We actually threw in like singing choruses and stuff, but the concept of the originally it was going to be 3 EPs, and I think we were only going to do 10 songs. And as we started writing it after the second song, I was like, oh, well, this is all space themed. I really love this idea of doing a space themed album. I like concepts. I'm a sucker for bands like Showbread or Oh Sleeper, where it's like, I just like concepts. It's cool. It kind of attaches a bigger meaning. So even though the song itself might be like a dark, depressive song, it's a part of the whole picture, like the whole story. Exactly. It's like, yeah, this chapter is intense, and then by the end you climax to the finale type of thing. So yeah, we started leaning heavier into the space themed stuff, and I just started kind of piecing stuff together, and like, oh, it'd be cool if part 1 is Moon, Earth, Sun, or Luna, Terra, Sol. Is that Latin? I think it's Latin for Moon, Earth, Sun.
Luna is Spanish, right?
It's also Spanish, yeah. Believe it or not, they came from that. But
the love languages.
I think Sol is also Spanish.
But yeah, so Luna, Terra, Sol, Moon, Earth, Sun, and a lot of the stuff wasn't kind of pre-planned. I feel like the songs themselves, Luna is a much more haunting, isolated, kind of ambient and like dark, I would say. Mm-hmm. And lyrically, that's kind of the idea about it is to basically reveal the metaphor. Luna, Terra, Sol. The moon does not create light of its own. It's entirely just a reflection of sunlight. And then you have the earth, and then you have sun, the origin of light, and it's, and life, and you can't live without the sun. So kind of the concept is Luna is more or less believers or, Christianity as a whole. And we're called to be a reflection of Christ, the sun, upon the earth, Terra. And what happens if Terra gets in the way of the sun? So if the moon lets the earth come and, get in the way of our relationship with God, it casts the moon into an eclipse, into complete darkness. Or what happens if the moon gets in the way of the sun, between the sun and the earth? It casts the earth into darkness. And so it's kind of like if we try to take the place of God, then it only causes chaos and darkness. So that's kind of the loose metaphor. Like, I don't necessarily explain that in the songs, but that's the idea behind the 3-part concept and the 3 astral bodies.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, but the songs themselves, like the songs in Terra, are very rhythmic and a lot more groove and very aggressive and hard hitting, which I was like, oh yeah, the earth, dirt,
Right.
Like rhythmic and tribal. And then Soul has our most progressive songs on the album, where it's like big long journeys, big sweeping melodic moments. And so I was like, yeah, the sun burning really bright. It's also very like major sounding. It's less like Luna's very minor sounding. So, so I just thought that was all. It's kind of stuff that over the last 8 years just kind of developed. It wasn't like we were like, this is our intent from the very beginning. It just kind of started unfolding, and it's just cool to see how God's hands works in that way and kind of guided it along. But yeah, really loosely awesome. That's it.
I wanted to ask real quick. You may have already said it, but I want to ask more specifically. So you guys wrote all 3 EPs at once, or did you write like one EP at a time over the course of a few years?
We wrote the whole album. Most of the album we wrote in a 2 to 3 year period.
Okay.
And then we kind of finished the ideas for the last 2 songs maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and but we recorded it all ourselves, which it's kind of a slow process. If you like, we don't really have much of a budget. We never really have. It's always just been a labor of love, and we invest the money that we have, and that's it. But so we didn't have money to go rent out a studio and pay a producer and stuff, and so Morgan just like dedicated himself to learning production and recording. We do everything digital, so a lot of DIs and resampling and and we use Dallas plays the drum parts, but it's all on a MIDI pad, so it just pumps the notes in there, and then we can adjust stuff if we need to and clean up things. And then vocally, it's all MIDI, so hold some keyboards.
I wouldn't be surprised nowadays, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
some, of
honestly.
some of those VSTs out there are crazy.
Yeah.
I just read a thesaurus and then sampled and then just hit random, and that's what came out.
There you go. Verb, adjective, noun.
Yeah.
Verb, adjective, noun.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna make metal music with like Siri or something. Right?
Yeah,
Oh,
or an ad lib, like the old ad lib books.
There you go.
always-
Ad-lib core.
Like body part buns.
They'll program it with AI.
Yeah.
With my own projects, I've been dreaming of doing a space themed like concept release of any sort, and now you guys have beat me to it, so there's no point. But
Can't copy them, Chris.
Well, here-
I think there's enough space for both of us.
Oh yeah.
but it's so amazing how it's all come together, and like hearing the full thing.
Yeah.
It's like, what's it like after this many years of planning it and working it out, like to have it finished?
So we honestly had it all, like we were pushing to get it done within like 4 years of starting it. And then that basically our guitarist passed away in a car accident, and that pretty well wrecked us about 2.5 years ago now, where it was hard. Like we didn't even get to meet up. As I play in another band, and we were out on a big tour from Florida down to California, and I found out when we were in Texas that, I just got a text from my brother saying like, "Hey, I'm so sorry about Anthony," and the whole night I was like, "This can't be right." Like I'm looking online trying to find any actual news article or police report or anything. I couldn't find anything, and nobody was saying anything, and I, not to bring it down, but basically I texted Anthony like, "Hey, are you okay?" And it breaks my heart because I'll never get a response to that text, at least not on Earth.
Yeah.
So, but basically that pretty well killed all. Like I'm a very, very like ambitious. Like let's go. I was pushing everybody forward. Like let's keep doing this, and stuff happened. And basically once Anthony was gone, it kind of it killed a lot of that like intense drive I had, because it kind of made me realize like, well, what good is this of making this stuff with my friends if my friends aren't here to share it? So
Yeah.
then as a band, like we didn't really practice for like 5 or 6 months, and the only reason why we did was because it was for Contagion Fest asked us to do a video, and so we're like, hey, let's start shaking the dust off and do these songs and stuff, and like our heart was like, we really want to finish this material and get it out, because like Anthony poured tons of effort into this, and I mean we all did, but like for us it was the memento, and it was difficult to finish it because it felt like once it's done, the last thing that we had out to share with Anthony is it's out, and so emotionally it was very difficult to like be okay with that, because it felt like it was the final laying him to rest kind of thing, and I don't know, but
No, I mean, a lot of what you said like rings true with me too, and like it killed so much like momentum and drive to do it there for a while, but it eventually became this thing like where I was excited to like show people this thing we had been working on with, and it's like this final piece of him that like that we all saw, that now that other people can experience too. So it's been a whirlwind of like conflicting emotions about it for sure, but ultimately I think it's amazing what we were able to do with him in the time we had, and then being able to release it is awe-inspiring.
And I mean, every band puts out material that they feel like, man, this is, for them, it's an emotional connection. Like they put their blood, sweat, and tears and money and everything they had into writing songs, which we did too. And for us, it was very much like oh, it's awesome to see how these songs are connecting to individuals. Some of the topics are really intense and deal with, personal traumas, which a lot of people have opened up to us. Like that happened to me too. And, we get to connect with them and encourage them and help them through that. And so like the songs were always important to us, but then in losing Anthony, it feels like those songs are him to us. Like, it signifies literally our entire friendship together. He the way I met him was he was trying out for our first band, and like, whoa, you should check out our new project stuff, because like I feel like you would like that. And he literally, I met him, and he moved in 4 days later. He's like, hey, can I move in?
Wow.
And then like just immediately, like day in, day out,
Yeah.
we were all writing and living together, and that's when we, like, the material came out really, really fast. A couple of the songs, like Collapse of the Red Giant, it came about because we were just goofing off writing a really heavy deathcore riff, and like, no, this is sick, do it again. And then like it became a song because we were just having fun, and then so it feels really, really good to finally, like, we saw it through, we got it out. Like it was hard to that last tenth of a mile or whatever, where it just emotionally kind of felt like an uphill push.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, it normally you feel like you're just striving and trying things and experimenting, but then it was just such an emotional whiplash of like, it took time for us to kind of heal. And I mean, I listened to Oh Radiant Dawn, the last song on the album. That was literally the last song that we were writing. And originally Anthony was like, I want it to be like, the magnum opus, huge progressive metal song that, has lyrics that borrow from all the other songs. And then one day I heard him playing that melody, which is the same melody from Luna, the first song in the album.
Mm-hmm.
But he was playing it on an acoustic, and like, man, it would be really cool to, like, if the last song on the album fades into that, and it's a callback to the beginning of the albums. It begins where it ends, type of thing. And then he ended up having the idea of taking the lyrics and changing it. So like Luna is very much, it's questioning, like, God, are you ashamed of me? Like, I have nothing of my own to offer. So it's kind of calling out into the darkness of like, God, what was the purpose in making me? And then he changed it, so it's like, finally, it's like, man, I'm not ashamed anymore, and I'm in your hands, type of thing. So it was just a really cool way to come back to that. And we were still talking about like, oh, it'd be cool to add in cello and drums and build it up, escalate it. But he wrote and recorded the acoustic, kind of the rough demo, and sent that to us. And then it was like a month later is when he passed away, and so we had to go and get those files from his computer, and like we just decided, like, we don't want to touch this. Like, this song's
it was as
beautiful.
perfect as is. And
like the first time I heard it when he sent to me, it was like, wow, this is gorgeous. Like, I love it. And he have all these visions of what to do with it, and then after that, it was like,
the first time I heard it
perfect.
After like his passing, like, it hit me in such an incredibly different way. And like, glad we didn't change anything, because I think it makes it that much more powerful. Yeah,
it literally, like, every time I've listened to it since that happened, it just makes me think of him, and I tear up or I start crying.
I literally can't listen to it without crying.
Yeah, so for us, it's everything. It really, literally is like, it's Anthony's voice, Anthony playing guitar, Anthony produced that song, like he did the mixing on it and stuff, and just everything about that song really is Anthony. And he was so literally Anthony was the most talented singer in the band. He was the most talented screamer in the band. He was the most talented guitar player in the band. He was the most talented bassist in the band, and the most talented drummer in the band. But luckily, there was only one of him, so we got to film. But like, and he knew his stuff. The rest of us were just kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good time signature.
Cool.
Yeah,
I think that's in 4/18. I don't know. Anthony could break it all apart and explain to you exactly what was happening, and like, he knew his stuff. And like, oh, we need a harmony, and he's like, oh, here's 7. And I'm like guessing, like, ah! Yeah, that works. Okay, no, that was bad. So like, it was just so cool. I think that Jesus basically got jealous of him being in our band. He's like, we need
him making music in heaven.
Like, the Angels have been a little pitchy lately.
Our last worship leader, we had a falling out, so there's an opening.
Oh my god!
How's your feel on rebellion? Like,
oh my goodness! Yeah, man, it's so cool though. Like the talent that he had to like really write a lot of this stuff, and now there's this kind of like piece of history that he created. And it's here, and we can all listen to it whenever we want for free on Spotify right now.
Yeah, for free.
Go support it.
Yes, definitely.
Go buy some of that sick Your Hands Right History merch.
Yeah, so
Taylor's got
the
a pretty
Tay
sick
Gumbe design.
I had too much time on my hands, but our first band, I've always drawn since like a little kid. My dad would always draw silly cartoons, like for the Tooth Fairy. If we lost a tooth, he would draw this really silly, like gnarly, hairy looking dude with big knuckles, like in a tutu, from the Tooth Fairy or whatever. And so our family's always drawn. Art and stuff was always a part of our family, but I didn't never actually intended to like do designs. And then I spent a year down in Mexico working at an orphanage, and all the staff there were like, "Dude, you draw? Could you draw me a tattoo?" And it's like, probably not, but I'll draw something. And so that kind of helped flush out my drawing ability, because I literally would just spend hours drawing these vague ideas, like I want a cross, but no, it's a tree, but also there's a guy in it, but also there's a heart in the middle, and also there's roots, but also the thorns are in the top, and you're like, okay. People don't know what they want tattooed.
Do you have an illustration of that? I
do. That was me, like, just recalling what I drew.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that helped me kind of flush out my drawing skills. And then when I was trying to start bands, I also was really into making like sprites for video games. My brother and I would program video games, being homeschooled and having lots of time on our hands and no friends. I would draw sprites, and we would make little top-down shooters or Zelda-ish kind of games. And so that kind of got me into the idea of like digital design, but I was using MS Paint for all of it. And then as I got older, the iPhone 3, I want to say, was my first iPhone, and you could get a drawing app, you know. So our first band, Me, Myself, and Enemy, I drew our logo with my finger, and, you know, spending hours, you zoom all the way in and erase and draw. And then I also drew our album art and like posters all with my finger. Spent like 14 hours drawing with my finger, and my hands cramping up. The screens were like 2 inches big.
Yeah, they were small.
You got big fingies, so
yeah, I got big fingies. But yeah, so that I went into a sticker shop, like, print this as a sticker. I don't know what file type you need or dimensions or anything. And so they told me what dimensions, and I couldn't figure out how to change the dimensions on my phone. So I finally got Photoshop and figured out basics, and I paid for a month of digital video tutoring or whatever, or it was just basically pre-recorded classes. And I spent like 2 weeks straight just watching all these videos, and that just helped me. Oh, that's where that tool is, because I just couldn't grasp it. It was way too many tools and big of a template. But that basically kickstarted me into graphic design. And then after that, I was like, wait, so that thing that took me 16 hours to do literally is 2 buttons? So it was kind of a, you know, but yeah, that got me into graphic design. And then other local bands were asking me for, hey, could you do our album art for $10? And I would spend 10 hours and like, yeah, here you go, $1 an hour.
That's hilarious.
But it's been very handy for saving money being in a band. Is like,
oh yeah, having a graphic designer in the band almost feels like cheating.
Or somebody who makes music videos, or records. We love doing everything ourselves, recording and production. Like, we don't know what we're doing; we're figuring it out. But the one thing I really don't enjoy doing is tour booking. It's basically like asking out 1,000 girls, and most of them don't even respond. They just look at you and walk away, and you've never met them. So you're like, hey, could you please give me a show? And you're lucky if they even say no.
That's hilarious.
So if there are any tour agents out there, let's talk. If you like rejection.
I'm like, honestly, that's the best. Well, probably not the best part, but like one of the best parts about being married. don't have to worry about that crap anymore. Like,
She
it's
asked
done.
out the girls
Through it.
for you.
Yeah. I was Chris's wingman for like 10 years.
You're like, oh, sorry, that guy didn't work out. Well, I mean, hey, here's an idea. Want to try me?
Oh my gosh.
Chris, what were you going to ask?
Well, I was just going to ask while we're on the topic of art, which
Mm.
kind of got off topic there, but the
Noodles only.
cover art has a lot of tiny details with like significant meaning behind them, and you just did like a full kind of like written series, kind of like talking about the details.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of go into that just a little bit and give a bit of a synopsis about
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
it all means and how it connects?
I'm gonna grab a copy so I can remind myself real fast. Yeah, I think.
That was the biggest. I think that was the biggest technical glitch we've ever had so far.
Yeah, because we had a technical glitch
I'm
while
proud.
you guys left.
It's an honor.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me stop recording, and then I had to like. We both left the studio. We're like, "What's going on?" Okay, we're back into it.
Thank you to our
see.
sponsors. No.
All our Patreon supporters, go
Yeah.
to patreon.com/the
Our
KingdomCore
sponsors.
podcast.
Yeah.
No, the
And
sponsors,
ramen.
The ramen, yeah.
The Maruchan Ramen Bowl. They're all-
Ramen brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends.
Ramen brought to you. Album art.
Yes, album art.
So, me with my brains spent too much time figuring out some symbolism for the 3-part album that we did. I think I can show it up there. It's
Yeah,
it's
we'll
too
have
dark.
it. We'll put up a
But
thing
basically,
as well.
the symbol here, it's 3 symbols. There we go. All stacked on top of each other. They're all interconnected. And basically, the idea behind it is since we started writing the space themed stuff, I was trying to come up with some space symbols, basically. And there's a couple artists that I saw that did kind of similar, like simplistic line work. And that kind of inspired the idea. So then I spent several months starting something and like, no, this sucks. And then I would scrap it. And then I'd come back and try again. No, this sucks. Scrap it. And then finally I came up with the 3 circles kind of overstacking each other. Originally I was trying to do like a Trinity symbol type of thing. And it just wasn't working the way I wanted it to. So yeah, then we came up with what we got here. And it's funny to me that you're like, oh, it has a lot of small, intricate details on the cover art. And like, this is actually like probably the most simplistic.
basic,
like I had to force myself and like, just do the symbols. Don't do other stuff. Cause like I'm so used to like trying to fill every single square inch with a drawing or something. So just doing the symbols was kind of a practice and restraint for me. But yeah, so they each of the symbols has a lot of small symbolic references to it. For example, the symbol for Luna, it has 12 bigger stars in it. And kind of the idea behind it was the 12 tribes of Israel, or it was kind of a loose metaphor that I was using for like the lineage of mankind, basically. And it also has the symbol for Omega. There's like it comes up and then goes around and then comes down.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then so it has Omega in it, whereas Sol loosely has the shape of Alpha in it, worked into its layout. And then it also, at the very tippy top, you got this little tiny circle with like a diagonal tail on it. And then down here, it's the opposite direction. But, I was just looking up for symbolism about the moon or whatever, and stumbled upon basically that circle with the little tail is a symbol for death and resurrection, or life and recreation. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. I'll add those in there. And then a lot of it was just kind of inspired by different, Bible theology and stuff. And yeah, that for Terra, it's got little symbols for trees and clouds and weather. It's also got, even though it's a Christian album or has Christian themes, I used, what is it called? Alchemy? Yeah. I used the alchemy symbolism. Witchcraft. With the alchemy upside down triangle with the slash through it. and that's where the demons come out of our albums. And then it also has like the Star of David with those alchemy symbols kind of interwoven into it.
Don't play the
but
music
that's
backwards.
where Yeah, you listen to the album backwards. Yeah, I always loved that joke. Like, oh, did you know that if you play Creed's album backwards, you can hear Satan talking, but if you play it forwards, it's worse. You can hear Creed. Or Nickelback. Sorry, Nickelback.
That's
don't do Creed like that.
Yeah.
What'd Creed ever do to you, man?
Christian Nickelback, man. Like, dude, at the time there was a website. I don't think it's operational anymore, but it was isnickelbacktheworstbandever.com. It was just a black screen with white text that said yes. That's great. I just want a band to be in a band, even if it is so notoriously hated, like, you know, Nickelback or Imagine Dragons. Like, to me, that's better than just being popular because you're good.
Well, I got some like respect for them too, right? Because like they know exactly what they're doing, and they're cool with it.
Yeah,
and they still sell out concerts, so they're doing something right.
And Taylor,
right, platinum albums,
channeling your inner Nickelback. You're just like, hey, look at this photograph.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it has a lot of other small symbolism. I did an individual post kind of going over. I think I covered all of them. Like, honestly, I made this logo set like 6 years ago.
Wow.
And we've been sitting on it waiting to reveal each one. And even then, I didn't really take the time to actually like, hey, look at this photograph. I just kind of like, it was just on the CD, like really dark, hazy. You could barely see the one symbol for each CD that we were doing.
Oh, okay. They were
And
like
then,
the CD label, like on the disc that you
so
used.
No, it was just on the. We just did digipacks, and you would open it up, and on the left-hand panel, it had very, very faint that symbol. Actually, on the CD, it did have a small metallic little version of each symbol too.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, if I had done it like the whole disc was that, I think the reason why I didn't do that is because technically the circles wouldn't have lined up like perfectly in the circle, so they would spin lopsided. Not that anyone can see their CDs, but to me, I was like, no.
Yeah, you have designer's eye. That would have been terrible.
It has to spin perfect circle, otherwise it'd be like.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for sharing that. If you guys are interested, you can go over to Taylor's posts or on the band page. I think you posted them and look at them.
I did. I don't know how to use social media well, but I was like, oh, you can. I was just gonna tag, and like, oh, you can invite them as a collaborator, and so I tagged myself as that. And like, oh wait, you can only do it to one. You can't do the whole band. Okay, that's weird. So, but I think they're tagged. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yhwhjams on Instagram. Or on Facebook, I think. Yeah. The old TikToks and the Snapchats and the
sick. All right, Sean, did you want to get into
I wanted to
let's dive into some album lyrics. So you guys fall in line with other progressive metal bands where you guys use a lot of big words, big vocabulary, and I love it. I think it's great. Taylor, are you the primary lyric writer?
Well, as I mentioned, I just read a thesaurus and hit shuffle. What came out is what we got. Yes, there was a line on the third song, "Wandering Stars." Dallas actually wrote half of the chorus of that one.
Okay,
and we really liked that. So he just came and was like, "Hey, I had this line idea," and so we worked that in because we really liked it. He also, in "Collapse of the Red Giant," there's two phrases. I have to reread my own stuff. It's been a while.
It's been 6 years.
I know.
He came up. He told me the meaning of the word eisegesis. I really liked.
I see Jesus.
Yeah, exegesis and eisegesis, and they both had really cool meanings. Honestly, my brain is blanking to what those meanings are. But yeah, I really loved those, and so I just worked those in because he just said, I really like these phrases, and those were really sick. then on the last song, the reworked version of Luna, O Radiant Dawn, Anthony came up with the rewording of that one. But other than that, I think I wrote all the stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, the album, the lyrics are extremely encouraging, definitely convicting throughout. I wanted to highlight one portion that during my first listen to it just really stuck out to me and impacted me. It's the middle part from Meteor Minds. It says, "I am undeserving of your pardon, but I cannot exist without reprieve. So prune my pride and graft my roots into your vine. We exist for so much more than our selfishness. We are the meteors burning to illuminate the night sky." And I think that perfectly encapsulates almost the entire concept of the record, because that is like the second to last song before O Radiant Dawn. So you can almost think of it as like the last full song before the closing out of the record. And that's just so beautiful. Would you mind just kind of taking us through that whole song and like what was the mindset through writing it? What were you trying to convey?
That was probably the hardest song to write because we had the music written for it for a while. It's also one of the hardest songs for us to play because it's a journey. It's got a lot of cool parts to it. And, it's a mouthful too. But I have this bad habit of writing words, like so many words that live. I like to move and jump around and do cartwheels and whatever.
And you have to remember all these billions of words that you wrote.
Yeah. Just got to practice them a lot.
Just say watermelon over and over. I hear that word.
Watermelon. Yeah, so Newborn Sun, it became the all-encapsulating, like I mentioned earlier that O Radiant Dawn, Anthony was really like kind of struggling with coming up with that song because he had big lofty ideas. And we had some riffs written, but it was like he just didn't know how to approach that one. And I told him, like, well, Newborn Sun is kind of already is, like, I already referenced a lot of the other songs in this song. It kind of is the all-encapsulating, like, you know, it's all been working up to this song kind of a thing, and so it calls back to a lot of the previous material. The whole song, though, I kind of have to read it through to kind of get a gauge what it actually all stands for. It's funny when you mention like, oh, this one line kind of wraps it all up. Like, oh, great! So I didn't have to write all those other ones. You could have saved me some time, Sean. I would say the Newborn Sun is kind of like the all encapsulating, and then Meteor Minds. It was actually a very specific subject. This one was kind of talking about a lot about just being distracted, more or less by like. Just, you know, this plane, our phones, the digital spectrum, like the very first couple lines, the effervescent glow speaks to melt my bones, bewitched by ocular meadows, I'm lured by angelic tones. Just talking about like we're so easily like pulled this way and that by what we see or what we hear, and you know there's so much division and confrontation online because like we'll read something like no, my opinion, my ego, this, and like we're just so easily suckered into that stuff, and you know, the digital screen, the effervescent glow is just constantly like melting our bones. So I was kind of picturing like, you know, a digital screen kind of, you know, bathing, you know, it's radiating on us, and we're so complacent in just watching it that our bones are deteriorating and like kind of just melting out of our body, if that makes sense. And then homeschooled, you know. And then a lot of this song is kind of dealing with like there's a section more near the beginning, but it kind of is just open big hits, just boom. And there's a line, and it's a small conversation that I was picturing of like God just talking to his child, and so tell me, child, what do you hear? And then there's a big hit, boom, and the child responds, the brazen trumpet draws me near. And I was thinking of Revelation talking about, you know, the last trumpet sound, you know, and it's kind of beckoning us. And so, and then he responds in question to God. It says, tell me, Father, what do you fear? And then God responds, the loss of a child whom I hold dear. So I was just kind of picturing that, like, you know, God's heart is, you know, as our Father, our Heavenly Father, it's like he cares for his kids, and then just nothing breaks his heart more than losing a child, and watching us being pulled away by what's out there. And then I really love the middle of this song because it's like almost kind of has a hip hop rap flow to it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel burdened and confined. Where is it there? Here it is. In a prison of doubt that I've built for myself in the confines of my own mind. There's an hourglass in my spine, grasping at the grains of sand that fall away with the passing of my limited time. I am held back by my pride as a pillar of salt upon the hillside, watching the world as it leaves me behind. So set me on fire to be refined. Take my impatience and distrust and make a weapon that fits your design. Like that whole thing is just kind of like
Bars.
coming to terms and realizing, like, man, I feel like I don't know if everyone feels this way. I used to think that everyone has thoughts like these, but then you kind of realize like, I guess some people don't. But I just feel like I
Mine are
overthink
much more simple.
so much, and I constantly I'll get suckered into Some of us don't think at all.
You guys have thoughts?
Yeah. Do your guys' fans think for themselves, or are they sheeple? But basically, I feel really overwhelmed by questions sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the other day, I had this question pop in my head, and like, is good and evil beyond God, or is it entirely just a nature of what God determined? So did he determine what is good and evil, or was good and evil existent before him? And it was like, I'm depressed now because I don't know if God is like, it's like, where did God come from? And I would get stuck on stuff like that, and I just feel my brain's kind of spiral sometimes, and you're like, I'm thinking too much about something. Like, it doesn't matter, it doesn't change the fact, like, if good and evil was existent before God, or if God existed and then he saw good and evil, or like, none of that matters. We're still in subject to him because he created us, type of thing. And so just trying to come to peace with that and just learning to live, like, now I gotta brush my teeth. I gotta take a shower.
Hi, honey. Going to work.
Yeah,
dude, you need to channel this
song,
you need to channel those thoughts into the new album.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of self-explanatory. Look at all those words. It's just 4 songs. But yeah, just the whole song just kind of encompassing, like, we're distracted by stuff and we're constantly looking for validation in the eyes of the world. So kind of talking about just the modern era with technology, social media, constantly feeling like, unsatisfied, constantly craving for value and purpose and wanting our lives to matter. But then when we hold it up to the mirror of social media, we just feel worthless. So I'd say kind of that wraps up Meteor Minds, what it's about.
Yeah.
And then, the very end of it, it's just talking about how faithful God is. And so you're as faithful as the sun. I wrote that line even before I knew it was going to be like the finale, or the finale full song. But in my opinion, like that literally wraps up the album really well. Is just talking about like the whole solar cycle concept and the themes and all the metaphors that are tied into every song. Just like God's faithful, and even when we're in the night, even when we're in the dark, we don't have a clue what's going on. It doesn't mean that the sun's not there. It just means that we're not looking at it.
Yeah.
And then it comes back around and ta-da!
And I love like what you were talking about when you were kind of like contemplating like God and good and evil, and like just trying to contemplate all that. One of my favorite sections of lyrics is from Nova Souls, and it's seek after the truth with wisdom, and surely you'll find evidence of our Creator's design. Our confusion is nearly the anomaly between an infinite being and our limited minds. And it's just like this.
Who wrote this stuff? It's weird hearing somebody else say it.
It's so good.
I think you were reading.
Yeah.
Dang.
Speaking of which, that's I just started reading that.
Man, Garrett Russell, move over.
I'm learning big words too. Seriously.
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, no, like just that whole section of that song is just like it's so good. And
that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Like, literally, I write this stuff, and then you don't really hear a lot of feedback. Like, you hear some people like, "Oh, that song means a lot to me," and
Mhm.
But then like hearing somebody actually like, wow, this line was cool. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Because like I would, read bands like Showbread or, Micah Kinnert from Oh Sleeper. Like Oh Sleeper is When I Am God. That is what
So good.
clicked in my brain. Like, you can actually write stuff that's not rhymes.
Yeah.
And it's like poetry. Like it was a weird album because at first listen I didn't like it. I was into more like attack type metalcore, Devil Wears Prada.
The crabcore.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I was into bands that every line rhymes, and it's kind of like it's more like a Mother Goose rhyme or something, or Dr. Seuss. But then I read his stuff and like, I don't know what these words mean, and there's so many of them. And that kind of freed up my own creativity, because I loved, at the time I wanted to be an author and write books, and so I was reading books, and it was always a little more lofty feeling than songs. And then most songs it was like, baby tonight.
I thought you were about to break out into Justin Bieber there.
I love it because I just realized this. The license plate on my van that we use for touring, it's 043 BBY, and I always referred to it as like, oh, it's like Justin Bieber, baby. A buddy of mine pointed out like, oh, like 43% or percent burnt or whatever, like Dillinger Escape Plan, like Dillinger Escape Plan, Justin Bieber, like that's great. So
choose your fighter.
I like that. Yeah. But yeah, that really means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Number one, for even reading the words, but also letting me know what you think and stuff. That's really cool. It feels like, wow, I actually did something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've listened to the album about 3 times now, maybe 4, and I'm like, only just am I now like kind of diving into the lyrics to really like look at them. There's so much,
a lot
to
of words,
take in.
man.
Yeah,
It's so
But,
good.
yeah.
We did not intend for it to be a 58-minute album, and oops.
Yeah.
We should have hit a full hour. Like
Yeah.
one more ambient song.
Yeah.
There you go. Just a song
Just slow
that
down the BPM just a bit on
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
song.
Yeah, one more whole section. So it's Luna, Terra, Soul, and then you could just be like Void, and it's just like,
Yeah.
and the whole song, it's just 2
Hey.
minutes of nothing. You don't even hear it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
It's the hidden.
Make it a hidden track.
Like throat singing or something.
Well, there's a band that does like the Mongolian like throat singing, like, but metal.
I can do it for
band is
bursts,
that?
but
I'll have to.
Oh, is that?
I can't remember what it is
Don't
now,
know
but
what
For Today had that song. Is it Joel the Watchman? Or it sounds like a toilet flushing.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh, the band is called The Who, and it's like HU.
Oh, I think it meant like the
not like
Who.
Who.
Not like the
no,
Who,
they
yeah.
don't.
The Who. Okay.
Who?
Yeah.
That's so funny. There's a band called The Who.
Yeah.
Doctor
The
Who.
Who.
The Who.
Yeah, The Who.
Yeah, this song's called Middle Age Wasteland.
Well,
Chris, do you think we are at time?
I think, probably just
Yeah.
about at time. We should probably wrap up, but we have a few minutes.
Yes.
But we'll figure.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been a real
Yeah,
pleasure. I
absolutely.
wanted to ask you guys before you leave if there's something you guys wanted to leave with the listeners of this episode going into listening to the album. Any takeaways you want them to walk away with from listening to the album?
Honestly, not really. Like, just thank you for your time. Like I say this at our shows a lot, but it's really true for us. We never expected that anybody would actually like want to hear us or see us at our shows. We were doing it just because we enjoyed it, and we enjoyed each other, and like writing music that we thought was cool. So like, people's time is valuable because it's the one thing you can never get more of.
Mhm.
And your life's finite, and so the fact that somebody would not only spend their time but also spend money, which is time, it's this is the time that I worked, and then I got paid money or whatever, and So when people would pay time or money or attention and watch us perform or listen to our music, it means so much to us because like they didn't owe us that. They didn't owe us anything. And there's so many other bands out there, and there's so much, there's Netflix, there's Apple TV, there's Spotify, there's all so much content out there. So the fact that anyone would actually sit there and give our content, a little bit of attention, that means a ton to us. So just thank you, and hopefully you like it.
Yeah.
I really hope.
Yeah.
If after 58 minutes, money back guarantee. You have to listen to all 58 minutes, though.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
We'll know if you don't.
Yeah, and then we'll refund you the 0.0002.3% of a cent that Spotify sent us. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having us, and we're grateful to be here. We're grateful that the album is finally out. It took a long time, and we went through a lot, but we're very happy of how it turned out and the fact that it's out there. The whole peddling thing. We do have a few CD copies left if people like physical copies.
I really want one.
Yeah,
But it
let me know
costs,
your
like,
address, dude.
I can't buy it because I'm in Canada and there's no shipping option,
me-
and it's
so-
a fortune.
I just sent one up to Canada. It was $15 for the shipping, but seriously, just
I
let me know.
will do that. I will do that.
Yeah, let me know your address and
Okay.
I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, if you could say
Deal.
your address on the podcast
you
right
have to
now.
say
Yes, right now.
No bleeps.
It's
bleep.
bleep 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 bleep.
P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way.
And, okay, Social Security. What?
Make a
What is
model
your
of your
mother's
first
maiden
car.
name?
Wait, do Canadians have Social Security?
Yeah, well, I always thought it's so dumb. So your social
We're getting
insurance
into
number,
Canadian economics,
and it's
now.
my SIN number. It's so dumb.
Your SIN number.
Well, your
666.
social insurance number, you have to give that to your employer. And it's like, but it literally says on the card SIN and then like your number.
That's the mark of the beast.
That's awkward
Yeah.
for the guy who has 666.
People worried about like chips in their forehead or the wrist. It's like, dude, if you got a job,
We're living in sin.
Yeah. Canada's just a godless land.
I mean, probably not far off there, boys.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Well, what city territory do you live up there?
I live in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Gotcha.
So we're
I
off.
I don't remember it much, but I lived in Vancouver
Oh, sweet.
for a year and a half, 2 years while my dad was doing film school up there, and I was about 1 to 2 years old. So
I mean, we are
and it
North
sucked.
Hollywood, so that makes sense. That was film school.
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
But no,
we'll
that's
have
sick,
to
dude.
come up and play with you guys.
Yes, like, I will literally, like, if you guys came to Vancouver, I will spend like $300 to take a trip overnight to go
You won't pay $15 for shipping. Come on. Oh, it's Canadian. 300 Canadian.
Oh yeah.
What's the value though? Or you guys can open up with a comedy set.
Yeah.
Sure.
There you go.
That's my
Steak
other
sauce
band.
mustache open.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah,
surprised we
so-
didn't talk about steak sauce at all. We didn't give you guys a plug at
Yeah,
all.
I'm kind of. I like that. I've straight up told people that that's my twins band because they're like, you're like, it's two different things, and I like having some separation, but because like I love all the projects that I'm involved with. Like I love them all equally. They're all
We're all your children.
incredibly fulfilling for different reasons. But I'm glad that this one was entirely about your hands right history. It was cool.
Yeah.
No one's ever done that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we're like Steak Sauce's dorky younger brother.
yeah, the tryhards.
Yeah.
That's
Less
awesome.
diapers, more riffs.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be like my tramp stamp tattoo. Less diapers, more riffs. Yeah, but thank you guys. Appreciate
Yeah,
Thank
it.
you guys for coming
Yes,
on.
thank you.
That is it for another episode. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening to the KingdomCore podcast. We've had an absolute blast with Taylor and Job from Your Hands Write History. Thank you so much to you two for coming on specifically. And we also want to take this time and give a special shout out to all our Patreon supporters, our core givers, $10 or more a month. And that is Steve Michalowski, Anthony Kuchma, Frankie Blocker, Tiffany Cadenhead, Aaron Peter, Jonathan Lyman, and the special Dead Pedal Coffee Company. Thank you to each and every one of you for supporting this podcast. We got some awesome plans upcoming in the coming months here. After Sean makes his move and gets settled in, we're going to finally start utilizing some of that Patreon money that you guys have given us. Stay tuned shortly for another awesome episode coming out very soon. I think you guys will be super excited for this one. It'll also be our last one for a tiny little bit of a summer break and until we kind of head in to the fall. So thank you all for listening. You can follow me over at For The Rock on Instagram and here on YouTube. If you're watching the YouTube video, hit that subscribe button, and you can follow Sean at kingdom.core over on Instagram as well. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. We are so excited to do more of it soon. God bless. Peace. We will see you soon.